We don't always know it's the beginning when we're standing inside it. Sometimes it's just a detail that refuses to leave. A pair of work boots set neatly by a door. A phone that keeps lighting up and going dark again. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just practiced. Rowan Kearns is a woman who built her life with her hands and her head and still got treated like an afterthought. She didn't come to us asking to be admired. She came with the kind of tired that shows up when family stops being family and starts being a threat. This is where her memory starts. I had my boots off because the office trailer floor was new, and I didn't feel like tracking dust across it. It was early. Crew wasn't in yet. The coffee tasted burnt because I'd let it sit too long while I checked the schedule for the week. My phone buzzed on the metal desk. Mom's name. I stared at it for a second like it was a bill I didn't want to open. Then I answered, "Hi, Mom." Her voice came in bright, like she'd already decided how the call was supposed to go. "Rowan, are you at work? I'm at the site." "Good. You're always at a site." There was a little laugh, but it didn't land. "Your father's doing the summer thing again. The gathering. He wants everyone there. I have a walkthrough this afternoon. You can do both." Paper rustled on her end. "Evan will be there early. Madeline, too." I didn't say anything. I watched a little line of dust drift across the desk from the vent, then settle. Mom filled the space. "It matters. Rowan. Just show up. Be normal." My throat tightened at the word normal, like it was a sweater that never fit. I am normal. There was a pause, and I could hear her breathing, like she was choosing the version of me she could tolerate. "Don't start." I stood up and put my boots back on. Slow. "I'm not starting. I'm telling you what's real." Her voice got quieter, sharper. "Your father doesn't like tension. Then he should stop inviting it." Another pause. Then, like she couldn't help herself, she said it. "Just don't make it about work. You know how Evan gets." I actually laughed, once, under my breath. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. We noticed how she didn't argue with the unfair part. She only tried to manage the noise. I kept my voice even. "I'll come for an hour." "Good. Wear something nice." I looked down at my boots, already dusted again, and felt that old reflex to shrink. I always wear something nice. When the call ended, the trailer felt smaller. I opened my calendar and moved my walkthrough. Then I texted my foreman the new time. The comment section stays open for stories like Rowan's, not the polished ones, the real ones. I showed up late on purpose, not dramatically late, just enough that the driveway was already full and the front door was propped open with someone's shoe. Inside, voices overlapped the way they always did, laughter that rose fast and fell flat, the smell of grilled meat and something sweet I couldn't place. I slipped my keys into my bag and stepped in. "Rowan." Mom called from the kitchen before she even saw me. "You made it." I said I would. She leaned in for a quick hug, light, like we were both aware of the time limit. "You look tired." "I am." She nodded like that explained everything and turned back to the counter. Plates clinked. Someone asked where the good serving spoon was. Dad stood near the window with a drink in his hand, talking to Uncle Mark about traffic. When he saw me, he lifted the glass an inch. Hey, that was it. No follow-up, no questions. He went right back to the window. Evan's voice cut through the room from behind me. "Well, look who finally escaped the dirt." I turned. He was already smiling, arm around Madeline, who looked exactly like the photos. Polished without being loud, calm in a way that felt rehearsed. "Hi, Rowan," she said, warm, careful, like she'd been told how to be. "Hi." Evan's eyes dropped to my boots, then back to my face. "You come straight from work. I came straight from my life." Dad cleared his throat. "Evan, it's a joke." Evan raised his hands. "Relax." Mom laughed too quickly. "Everyone grab a plate." I moved toward the side table, feeling the familiar narrowing. Conversations angled away from me, not unkindly, just efficiently. Evan held court near the center, talking about a meeting in the city, something about timelines and investors. Heads nodded. Dad listened. Madeline leaned toward me when Evan stepped away. He talks a lot when he's nervous. I smiled. He always has. She hesitated, then smiled back. I'm glad you're here. I believed her. That almost made it worse. From across the room, Evan caught my eye. His smile shifted, just a notch, like he'd noticed something he didn't like, and filed it away. I picked up a plate and waited for the evening to decide what it wanted from me. I didn't stay long after dinner, long enough to be seen, long enough to prove I wasn't hiding. Then I slipped out while everyone was distracted by dessert. The drive back was quiet, no music, just the sound of the road and the rattle from the back where I'd tossed my jacket. My phone buzzed once at a red light. Evan. I didn't open it. I learned early that waiting for approval was a bad investment. When I left home at 19, Dad handed me a folded piece of paper with a list of places hiring, landscaping crews, warehouse shifts. No speech, no warning either. Just a nod like this was how things were supposed to go. Mom hugged me in the doorway. Call us when you're settled. I never knew what settled meant. I figured it out later. It meant not needing anything. My first real boss was a man named Carl. Thick hands, always smelled like sunscreen and coffee. On my second week, he watched me load a truck and said, "You break it, you fix it, you lose it, you pay for it." I told him that was fine. He smiled. Good. Then you'll last. I lasted because I had to. I learned permits by getting fined, learned bids by losing them, learned zoning by standing in city offices with bad lighting and worse chairs. When things went wrong, there was no one to call, no money to float me, no quiet forgiveness. That changes how you move through the world. My phone buzzed again when I pulled into my driveway. This time it was Mom. I answered. You left early. I said I would. She sighed. Evan thinks you don't like him. I leaned my head back against the seat. That's not what this is. Then what is it? I stared at the dark front of my house, the lights I paid for, the silence I chose. It's me, not pretending. I said, I don't have a backstop. Mom, I never did. She didn't answer right away. Well, she finally said, softer now. Try not to make things harder than they need to be. The line went dead. I sat there a moment longer, then grabbed my bag and went inside, already thinking about work in the morning. The second gathering happened a few weeks later. Smaller. Outside this time. Folding chairs, plastic tables, the same old rhythm pretending to be relaxed. I showed up with a bottle of something red and inexpensive. Mom took it from my hands and set it down without looking at the label. Just put it over there. I nodded and stepped aside. Gravel crunched under my boots. I stayed near the edge, close enough to be polite, far enough to breathe. I was halfway through a paper plate of food when I heard my name from behind me. Rowan. I turned. It was Tyler, one of our cousins. Still had the awkward shoulders of someone growing into himself. Hey, I said. He pointed past me, toward the road. I saw your trucks down by Riverbend, the ones clearing that lot near the water. That you, I hesitated. Just a beat? Yeah, that's us. His face lit up. That's cool. I drive by there every morning. It's a good site. I said, needs work. Behind him. Laughter cut off mid-sentence. Evan stood a few steps back, drink in hand, smile already fixed. Wait. Your trucks. Tyler glanced between us. Yeah, Rowan's company. They're doing the Riverbend property. Evan stepped closer. You mean working on it? I shook my head. No, I own it. The words landed heavier than I meant them to. I felt it right away. The pause. The way conversations nearby gave up their shape. Evan laughed once. Sharp. Since when? A while. How many is that now? He tilted his head like he was playing. Projects, I mean. I kept my voice level. 2. Someone near the grill went quiet. I caught Dad's reflection in the window. He was watching now. Evan took a slow sip. 2 properties. Huh. His eyes dropped to my boots. Guess dirt pays better than we thought. I felt the familiar urge to shrink, to smooth it over. I didn't. It pays steadily, I said. If you do it right. He smiled wider, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, good for you. Mom appeared between us like she'd been waiting. Everyone ready for dessert. Tyler mumbled something and drifted away. Evan leaned in just enough for me to hear him. You should have mentioned it. We could have helped you scale. I met his gaze. I didn't need help. Something flickered there. Annoyance, calculation. Sure, he said. Whatever you say. He stepped back into the circle, already talking again, louder this time. The air never quite settled after that. It stayed tight, watchful. I finished my drink and left early. On the drive home, my phone stayed silent. That was when I knew he wouldn't let it go. The air at the Riverbend site felt unfinished, a mix of river mist and the sharp scent of diesel. I was standing by the intake valves, checking the pressure for the second phase of the irrigation install, when my phone buzzed. It wasn't a casual vibration, it was the rhythmic pulse of a primary lender. I answered on the third ring. Rowan Kearns. Rowan, it's Marcus from First State. I'm looking at the drawdown request for the Riverbend equipment package. He paused, and in that silence, I felt the ground shift. We've hit a hard stop on the disbursement. I wiped a streak of grease onto my jeans. A hard stop. The credit line was cleared last month. Marcus, the crew is literally unloading the conduit right now. I know, he said, his voice dropping into that cautious, professional register used for delivering bad news. But a Uniform Commercial Code Financing Statement, AUCC1, was filed against your entity late yesterday. It lists a third-party interest in your primary receivables. Under the terms of your loan, that's an automatic freeze on all senior credit activity. My stomach dropped, cold and heavy. A UCC1 isn't just paperwork. It's a public flag that says someone else has a claim on everything you own. It's a digital fence around your capital. I didn't sign any secondary lien. Marcus, I don't have partners. I figured as much. But until this is vacated, my hands are tied. We can't release the $400,000 for the vendors. Your refinancing for the mixed-use lot is also on indefinite hold. After we hung up, I leaned against the rusted side of a supply crate. Dust settled on my boots' practical, heavy-duty leather that suddenly felt like they were sinking into quicksand. I called my attorney, Sarah, immediately. It's identity theft in a suit. Sarah said after she pulled the filing, someone used your EIN and a forged digital signature to claim you've leveraged your company's future revenue against a private loan. It's a scar on your credit. Rowan, even if it's fake, it tells every bank in the state that you're high risk. How long to fix it? We have to file a correction statement and a formal protest. Weeks, maybe months if they fight it. I looked at my crew. They were working on a schedule I could no longer fund. The payroll for Friday felt like a mountain I couldn't climb. My phone buzzed again. A text from Evan. Heard the Riverbend expansion hit a snag. Let me know if you need a bridge loan. Family looks out for family. Right. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The mark he'd left on my life was visible now. A surgical strike designed to make me beg for the very help that would let him own me. I sat in my truck and watched the river, finally realizing that Evan didn't want me to fail. He wanted me to be his. The email arrived at 9:14 a.m., nestled between a supply invoice and a weather alert. The subject line was deceptively sterile update regarding the Northside Hospital redevelopment bid. It was Greg from Municipal Procurement. I stepped outside the trailer, the sound of the excavator grinding in the distance, and hit dial. Rowan, Greg said, his voice lacking its usual warmth. I'm sorry about this. But the committee had an emergency session this morning. We're rescinding the intent to award. I felt the blood leave my face. On what grounds? Greg. We're the lowest qualified bidder. The safety audits were spotless. It's not the audits. It's the character of the operation, he said, and I could hear him leaning back in his swivel chair. Uncomfortable. A series of formal complaints were filed with the board yesterday. Allegations of zoning irregularities on your Riverbend site and unverifiable subcontractor insurance. But more than that. Someone with significant leverage reached out to the chairman. They expressed concern that a company of your size couldn't handle the liability if things went south. Significant leverage, I gripped the railing of the trailer. Greg, you know who's behind this. My brother was at the Chamber of Commerce gala with the chairman last night. Wasn't he? Greg sighed, a long, weary sound. I can't confirm names. Rowan. But the board is risk-averse. They'd rather go with a larger, connected firm than deal with a potential scandal involving a Kearns. They assume if your own family is flagging your risk, there must be smoke. By noon, the official letter arrived. The $420,000 contract, the revenue that was supposed to float my payroll while the UCC1 freeze throttled my bank accounts, was gone. I sat at my metal desk, staring at a printout of my bid. It was a perfect document, but in the world Evan lived in, perfection was no match for a whisper in the right ear. My phone buzzed on the desk. Evan, rough day. I heard the hospital board decided to play it safe. Maybe you're out of your league. Ro. Let's talk about that acquisition offer again. It's the only way out. I watched the screen dim to black. He wasn't just trying to outrun me. He was trying to starve me out so he could buy the remains. I looked at my boots, caked in the dust of a site I was now fighting to keep. I didn't feel like crying. I felt like a builder who had just found a termite mound in the foundation. I knew exactly what to do next. Grandpa showed up the next morning without calling first. His truck was already parked by the fence when I pulled in, engine ticking as it cooled. He stood near the trailer, hands in his jacket pockets, watching the river like it had something to confess. You look tired, he said when he saw me. I didn't sleep, figured. We went inside the trailer. I poured coffee. He didn't ask for cream. Never did. For a minute we just stood there. The heater clicked on, then off again. It's not just bad luck, I said finally. It's deliberate. He nodded once, like he'd already accepted that version of the world. Tell me. So I did. The filing. The calls. The bid that vanished without a fight. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I laid it out the way I'd learned to lay out permits and inspections. Clean, in order. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took a sip of coffee and set the mug down carefully. You got copies? Digital? He shook his head. That's not enough. I opened a drawer and pulled out the folder I'd brought from home. Printed emails, screenshots, the filing, notes in the margins I hadn't realized I'd written. He flipped through them, slow, careful, like he was holding something fragile. If anything happens to your files, he said, this stays with me. I nodded. That's why I came by last night. He glanced up. You trust me. I do. He closed the folder and slid it into his jacket. Good. Because once people cross into this kind of thing, they don't stop on their own. We stepped back outside. The air was cold enough to sting. As he headed for his truck, he turned back. You don't owe anyone silence. Rowan, not family. Not anyone. I know. He smiled then. Small. Solid. I'll hold on to this. I watched him drive off, the folder riding shotgun, and felt something shift. Not relief. Not yet. Just the sense that the truth had somewhere to land if it needed to fall. The meeting took place in a sterile, borrowed conference room that smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. I preferred it that way. Nothing about the setting suggested the wrecking ball we were about to swing. Samuel sat across from me, his face illuminated by the harsh blue light of his laptop. The digital trail is ironclad. Rowan. He wasn't just inflating numbers. He was concealing negative equity while soliciting new capital. That's not just a lie. It's securities fraud. Claire, my crisis strategist, leaned forward. She had spent the morning scrubbing our disclosure for any hint of emotion. My job is to ensure you aren't sued for telling the truth. We aren't leaking gossip. We are filing a formal whistleblower disclosure to the Croft family's legal counsel. It's clinical. It's verified. It's undeniable. And the timing I asked. The full dossier hits their lead counsel at 9:00 a.m., Claire said, her voice cool and precise. A courtesy summary reaches Madeline's personal device at 5:45 p.m., just as the rehearsal dinner starts. By the time Evan stands up to give his toast, the Crofts' attorneys will have already advised them to freeze all marital and business assets. I nodded, feeling a strange, cold clarity. One rule. Rowan, Claire added. Once the emails go out, you stop engaging. No texts, no shouting. Silence is your best defense now. I stepped out into the afternoon air. I wasn't shrinking anymore. I texted Grandpa the dam is breaking. His reply came instantly. I've got the folder. Go finish it. The rehearsal dinner didn't end in a shouting match. It ended in a sudden, icy silence. I didn't stay to watch Evan's world finish collapsing. I simply watched from the periphery as the Croft family retreated into a tight, whispering circle of lawyers and security. I drove home through the dark, the quiet no longer feeling like something I had to endure, but something I had finally earned. The fallout was clinical. Within 72 hours, the Crofts triggered an emergency clawback provision, freezing Evan's access to their capital without their backing. His consulting firm folded like a house of cards under a wave of margin calls. Interestingly, as the truth about Evan's sabotage leaked into the local procurement circles, the Northside Hospital Board reached back out. My bid was reinstated. The $420,000 revenue was back on the books. 2 weeks later, Grandpa came by the site. He sat in his folding chair by the fence, watching the crew set the final stones for the Riverbend walkway. We didn't talk about the wedding or the emails. We just watched the work. You okay? He asked eventually. I am, I said. And for the first time, I didn't have to convince myself. I looked down at my boots. They were covered in a fine layer of gray grit, the dust of creation, not the mud of a scandal. Dust washes off. A solid foundation stays. I'm still here, still building, still quiet, because I finally realized that power isn't about making noise, it's about becoming unerasable.